Hey everyone, welcome to the Sunday Sitdown. And I don't have a cool pun for that this week because it is Tuesday. It's not Sunday, but we're talking about Sunday. We are here today with Lindsay Sytsma, who was preaching this past Sunday through Luke chapter 9, the story of the feeding of the multitude.
Nice.
This is
good job.
I know.
Not the 5,000.
Not the 5,000.
Not the 5,000, which only counts men.
It was more
feeding
than
the multitude.
5,000. I might have given a little boo to not.
I called you out on your boo. You didn't let me get to the point where I was going to be like, no, we're not going to do that. But
it's okay. It was a visceral reaction to, for those who weren't there on Sunday, Lindsay, you were talking about, how the 5,000 only included men,
yes.
and that with women and children, it would have likely been double, triple, quadruple.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I was just booing at the fact that
we talked
patriarchal society,
yes,
etc.
and how they count, how they count people being there.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, this is fun. You and I have never done this before.
No, I'm kind of just like, oh my gosh, where's this gonna go?
So for those who don't know, this is my wife. And we have never, I've never interviewed her before. We've never done a podcast together. We talked about doing it at one point.
Yeah.
And then
which just never happened.
It just never happened.
We had a kid and then, life
and stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah. But here we are, several years later.
We're trying it out.
Yeah.
Trying it out for Courtright.
We'll see how it goes. So anyway, we are here to have a conversation about this passage. And I was really encouraged by a few conversations I had with people after the service, and just the way that they were reflecting on this. And I think that what I want to do today is get a little bit more specific in some of the ways in which we struggle. So I want to read the passage, and then I want to highlight those 5 words that you mentioned as being sort of kind of the pillars of this passage. So
Great.
I'm going to read here and then we'll get into it. So this is starting at verse 10 of Luke chapter 9. It says, "When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they had done. Then he took them with him, and they withdrew by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healing those who needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, 'Send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we are in a remote place here.' He replied, 'You give them something to eat.' They answered, 'We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd.' About 5,000 men were there. But he said to the disciples, 'Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each.' The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up from heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them and the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over." So there are 5 words that you highlighted: welcome, give, everyone, satisfied, and broken.
Yes.
I loved the way that I'm a little biased.
Thank you.
But
Thank you so much.
I love the way that you structured that. It was a little different than what we've done before.
It's not typically my preaching style.
Yeah.
So I typically go more kind of thematically or group big things together. But I think when I was reading that passage, I could not get those words out of my head as I was looking at them. And I'd like to think that was the Spirit prompting me, like maybe we should go in a little bit of a different direction than maybe what you would typically have done. So
and it really worked. I loved the way that it sort of just illuminated these different parts of the passage, and gave them a lot of life. And so we're gonna kind of center. We might not touch on all of them granularly, but we're gonna touch on some of them more broadly. So the first thought, and this is a broad question. These 5 words are such a great picture of the kingdom, as you highlighted.
and interconnected. I just want to add
yeah.
that in. Like, I don't think that it's possible that each one could also stand on its own, but what I really loved is that I think they collectively form a picture of the kingdom. I don't think any one of them is really complete without the other.
Yeah.
So
I think you can't welcome without having a spirit of giving and generosity.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not giving and generosity if it's not for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like welcome doesn't mean you welcome some. Welcome means you welcome everyone. So you have to look at those two together.
Yeah. So when I think about the kingdom, and when I think about the church and the way that the church should function, and I want to, like, maybe as a brief aside, like, separate like kingdom from the church. Kingdom is like the bigger, broader, overarching.
Yeah.
And the church, I often think of the church as sort of the vessel by which the kingdom is lived out. There's a guy, Reggie McNeil, wrote a book many years ago that I'm failing to remember the name of, but he uses the metaphor of the church is an airport and the kingdom is the destination. And I always like that because it's like the airport is essential for travel. If you want to go to Italy, you got to go to the airports, right? And so the church is the vehicle, the vessel for the kingdom, to live out the kingdom, to do the work of the kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate the metaphor. I would say that I think the church is also part of the kingdom. Like, it's not just the means to an end. The church also exists within the kingdom
definitely.
as well.
I don't see it as like just merely a means to an end. You're right. But it is, because it's a crucial component of the kingdom. But it is the launching pad to do all of the work, right? It is, and because it's a place where we naturally gather and we have to like work out this stuff in real time, in real life, right? The kingdom is theoretical, until we have to actually do it with one another, with people. Right?
Sure, everything is just an idea until it is actually lived out, and it is meant to be lived out.
Yeah, and so I want to like think about churches functioning in light of the kingdom, in light of these 5 words of welcome and giving and involving everyone and being satisfied and broken is an interesting one.
It was the weirdest word to kind of throw in there because all of the rest of the words have like, whether or not we live them out well, all the other words give you warm, happy feelings.
Yeah.
Broken does not typically give you that.
So like, I think it's worth like just taking a moment and actually spelling out, not literally, but talking through how the church can do some of this.
Great.
Like nuts and bolts kind of stuff, right?
It.
Like, and maybe even just like go through them quickly and think like, rapid fire, let's talk through some ideas. How can we increase our kingdom welcome for people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great. If that's a question. It's just throwing it out there. How do we increase our kingdom welcome? I mean, I think welcome speaks to, like we talked about on Sunday, welcome isn't just about a hello or a greeting or a social courtesy. The welcome here is about actually embracing people, being happy that they're there, letting them know that you genuinely appreciate them and that you value them. There was no test for the people to be available. Like, whoever wanted to come and see Jesus came and saw Jesus. And it says that Jesus welcomed all of them.
Like the barrier of entry was
lower. The barrier of entry was real low in this.
Yeah, you can get there. Come on.
Yeah. And I mean, the disciples, for whatever reason, or Jesus and the disciples, I should say, they were somehow in a place that could, I mean, I don't think it's an amphitheater, but they were in a place where all of these people could also be, right? Like, if they had really wanted to just meet by themselves, they could have met in an upper room in a home or something. Yeah. But they are gathering in a place that also is primed for people to be there with them. Yeah. I do think there's something about welcome here. Like, the crowd obviously came to Jesus. I think there is, and maybe this is where kind of the metaphor, the passage doesn't fail us, but it doesn't show the complete picture, is that I think welcome can also be going into spaces where people already are, not necessarily people always coming to you. That's the example that we see here. But again, when you're talking about 15, 20,000 people, how else was this really supposed to look? So, but yeah, I think welcome is the warmth. Welcome is the invitation. Welcome is, is I love that low barrier of entry like, I mean, when you think, I mean, it's kind of like the word that defines itself. Welcome means that everyone is welcome, but welcome means open. I really meant that welcome means open arms. Like it's, yeah.
I often think it through as someone kind of from a staffing perspective responsible for our welcome process as a church in some ways. I'm often thinking through the gaps. You know, if someone comes and they are not greeted, which is a form of welcome, obviously, and they're not treated hospitably, and all of these different things, right? Like there's some real practical stuff there that we're in the process of trying to really think through and revamp in some ways, but I think like you can get lost in all those details,
and it can become coercive. It can be in some ways, like they can be like, come up and we'll give you a present and we'll bring you on stage and we'll clap for you and it's stuff like that. And it's, don't get me wrong, I am sure that the places and spaces that do that, they do. I think they have a good heart behind it. Like I'm not questioning that, but it's also, we talk about meeting people where they're at. Like there's people where for people, it's really hard to walk into a church or go into that gathering or take that step and be like, oh, I'm going to be in a small group at someone's house. Like that's really, really hard for them. Yeah. And I think welcome, we talked about like meeting needs in this passage, obviously Jesus meeting the core food need that people had, but on a more broader context, meeting people needs is also meeting them and where they're at and welcoming where they're at and that being okay.
Yeah. And then sometimes overwhelming people with 5 people around and ever like, we talked about giving people like a cup of coffee. You don't want like 8 people doing that because that's too much coffee.
I'm an introvert. I like, if you did that to me, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I need to run away right now. Like this might be too much for me. But
I think like just at a broader level, I think that there is there ought to be in all churches and in our church this like just this willingness to go above and beyond in our embrace of those who have been around for many years, those who have returned after many years away, those who are brand new, right? That our embrace and welcome of everyone as they come into our space. And I like that idea of potentially that, being extended to when we go out to other spaces. But, obviously, practically speaking, we are often inviting people into our space, whether it is for a church service, whether it's for a community event, like I think about the garden open house that we had a few weeks ago and wanting to make that a place that feels very welcoming and open. We offer free food. We offer, I just think it's.
I'd also say the one thing I would add is a word that maybe not enough churches throw around is like the concept of being accessible as well. And I mean that in all of its forms. I mean that for people who have physical disabilities that need a building to be accessible, people that have barriers to listening or sitting in rows or learning in specific ways. Like I think that there's a lot of creative energy that could be put into making spaces accessible for people and that being part of our welcome. So
our kids ministry coordinator, Elena, she's done a lot of great work in wanting to make sure that our space is accessible for kids of varying needs and, having, headphones for kids with sensory challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're working on other things that will make sure that kids that have other needs are able to enjoy and enter into Sunday school as well.
Yeah, and I would say like no space is going to be perfect. And it's not about creating a perfect space. It is about, I think that being genuine about your welcome, being genuine about the reasons that you want to do this, having that in kind of intrinsic motivation that is thinking about it like a home. Like I want people who step into our home. I can actually say that now. I want people who step into our home. I want them to feel comfortable there. I want them to feel like we are happy to have them there. It doesn't matter what they believe. It doesn't matter what they look like. Those things don't matter. I want them when they are in our home to feel like there is a sense of warmth and belonging there. Yeah. And how do we bring that out to a macro level at a church for people, I think is important.
No, absolutely. That's great. Okay. Next word, give.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Give. And so obviously like giving is connected to generosity.
Sure.
And just thinking through, I guess sharing and I like that idea that you said of giving not necessarily being equated with loss.
Yes.
That there is something to be gained when we give,
Yeah.
and there is something that when we do this together, there is something beautiful that happens.
Yeah. Well, do you think, I mean, like, it's funny. So often when we talk about give, the words are, we give away. Like, even that concept of, like, it's going from you, it's going far from you is, you're right, that is intrinsically connected or often in language connected to the concept of give, as where, I mean, at its most base level, and this sounds, like it sounds like a little bit like self-righteous Christian, which I'm not trying to be, but it's one of those, like, nothing is ours.
Yeah.
Like the earth is yours and everything in it. Psalm 24. Nothing is ours. And I think that's a hard thing for people to kind of reconcile in their brain. But what you have been given, you are a steward of, and being a steward of something means at times putting it towards another use. Like, even the word give, like, it still makes that image of, oh, it was mine to give, but it's really more of a stewarding, like you're redirecting it to a greater need potentially.
We have like a really tangible picture of that in the church here. For those who have been around for the past couple of years, we've been a branch of the Guelph Food Bank. We're a satellite location, and people often ask us, where do you get all the food from? Are you dependent entirely on donations from the church? Is it no? We're a satellite location for the Guelph Food Bank. They twice a week they will make 2 deliveries per week.
Yeah.
And we are stewards to then give that food to those in need, right? So you could think of the Guelph Food Bank as God, and that we are then become the stewards of these gifts that we give to other people, right? And I think there's something in that for us to think about, and as a church, how are we growing and stretching our generosity? And sometimes that's uncomfortable.
Yep.
Sometimes it's hard to, especially when you want to, and we'll get into this when we look at satisfaction and whatnot. Like when we want to make sure that we've been looking after ourselves.
Yeah.
Giving is hard.
Well, and giving is not a call to neglect yourselves. I think, again, like give and satisfied are the most related concepts, I would say, out of all of them. It's, I don't think that, again, and it's, I think I said this on Sunday, I hope I said this on Sunday, that it's not a call to like asceticism or deprivation, or I don't believe that's what Jesus is calling anyone to, but it is a call to generosity and to sharing and to seeing needs and saying, if I can meet that need, I have in some way a duty to do that as part of this community, as part of this kingdom. If I see genuine need, I need to look internally. We need to look as a church, what is our role in using what we have provided to help meet a given need? Yeah. Again, just like with Welcome, we're not going to be perfect at it, and not every need can be met by us, by an individual, by a church. That's not possible, but maybe there's a way we can connect it to someone else. Like I've worked in social services before, and no social service agency can meet every need for the people who come to them, but they can also say, I know a way to help you find that. I can resource you in another way. So I love that image of giving I mean, I think all of these are internally reflective to some ways, and it's, if I'm seeing need, what am I doing? Am I closing my fists? Am I crossing my hands? Am I saying I can't deal with that? Or is there more of an openness to dealing with that?
And I do think that there is, a job for the church to do. Our church, every church, should be asking, what is the next thing that God is calling us to in terms of being generous? What is the thing that the Spirit might be leading us toward? And I know that, for Courtright, it seems like it's food security, right? That's been a big rallying cry for us with our food security garden, with the food cupboard, and other aspects as well. Even like when people in our community are like, grieving, or they've had a surgery or illness, like, man, meals, they just got like food is seemingly a critical component. And so it's like, what's the next thing in that way? There's more that we can do. We need to make sure we do it responsibly. We need to make sure that we can actually like sustainably do that moving forward, right? So we got to make, every church has to decide for themselves what they can do. But I also think we need to like not play it too safe, right? That God stretches us.
Yes,
God stretches us when we are faithful and in calling. Yeah.
Well, and there's a piece to this story, and this is the thing probably we did not touch on Sunday at all. There is a faith component to this story.
Yeah.
Because the disciples are asked to give up what food they have for themselves. So that they could help kind of meet the needs of others. So, I mean, we talked about give. There is an element of maybe sacrifice in here. There's also that element of trust. I mean, I think, again, we talked about it on Sunday, but, this is called a wilderness. The text says remote place. It's better translated as wilderness. Wilderness is a place often of testing, of trust. You see it with the Israelites, with God providing their daily needs. You see it with Elisha in Kerith and God meeting his needs through the ravens. And then again, that's a place of wilderness. So wilderness is about God's provision. It's also, how are we trusting? How are we leaning into knowing that God provides abundantly, even when we don't, for the disciples, they don't know what Jesus is going to do. They see five loaves, two fishes, and like, that's not enough. What on earth could possibly happen here? But again, it was leaning into trust, leaning into, okay, I guess we're going to trust that God is going to do something here. He's going to show up. And he often does. So.
That's good. Okay. Everyone. Next word. This one probably could be a little shorter because it's simple. It's everyone.
It means everyone.
It means everyone.
Yep.
But I think that, just to riff on that a little bit, like everyone... even in spite of maybe theological differences, lifestyle differences.
Yep.
There was no way for the Jesus and the disciples to do some sort of
There's no background.
check.
There's no background checks on these people
as they arrive.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. That's a tension that when we consider our welcome and our embrace and our generosity toward people, that the challenge is that it's going to be uncomfortable because there's people that we're not going to agree with and that we're not going to even necessarily like on a social level.
Yeah. I think that everyone, like you said, everyone can be shorter because it's simpler and we know what it means. I agree with that. I also think that when we think of everyone, it's easy to think of our friends or the people that, I really want to get to know them better. That's easy. It's think of the people that you struggle with most and what does it mean to welcome that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in a way that jeopardizes safety or things like that. There's always a balance, but what does it mean? I mean, again, I think that we so quickly go we love the picture of welcome, and then I'm like, okay, but that means welcoming this and welcoming that and welcoming this and
yeah, it ends up becoming very messy very quickly when we broaden our welcome to everyone.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. That's something that we've worked in a few different spheres, you and I, of ministry. You worked at Hope House for a number of years. And there is when we consider folks that are struggling with addiction, folks that are struggling with housing security, there's challenging situations out there, people that are having extreme mental health crises.
Yep.
And then for others who maybe that is not maybe in their purview as much, just think about the type of person that you get along with the least. Someone who kind of represents your ire in some way, right?
Yeah.
And that is we got to figure out how we do that well, and we're not going to do it perfectly.
No. And how do we love those people? I could be the challenge to someone else, and recognizing that me and what I represent and the things I believe, that could be a big challenge for someone else. And how would I want that person to embrace me and see the fullness of me?
Yeah.
And being able to extend that to others. So
yeah, it's hard, and we need God's strength.
Yeah.
Because people are challenging, including me. I am also people.
I'm not going to say anything to that as your wife.
She's like, I can confirm.
I can confirm that. He can be. But again, I can be challenging too. We never want to think of ourselves as being the challenge. But we would be to some people.
Yeah.
And I think just, again, how do we lean into people with curiosity? How do we lean into them with trying to think well of them, trying to assume the best about people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those. It's very hard.
And then also, how are we not naive? To
Sure.
There is a certain, especially when you're dealing with, there's subsets of people who will try to take advantage and who will try to, utilize or take advantage of someone's kindness, right? And I've been in that situation where someone, not at court, right, but where someone has popped in my office and they've said, I need this, that, and the other thing.
Of course.
And you're believing it's earnest, and then you find out they were lying.
Well, and again, we have to go back. It's easy to think of these as one-on-one interactions, like all individual one-on-one interactions. If we think about, church spaces or any place where there is a group of people, everyone has to mean everyone, where it means if welcoming, I don't want to I hate reducing people down to letters and things like that. But if welcoming one person or one group means that other people are unsafe or feel unsafe or there's something there, again, everyone often means doing the best for a group of people. And what does that look like? And understanding. Yeah, I mean, I in our one-on-one interactions, I do think that we should be welcoming. But I think it's easy to think of things in a very individualistic way. And we have to also take it broadly into what does it look like to be a welcoming group.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. That's good. Okay, next word, satisfied. This I think is the hardest one. I think in many ways.
Absolutely.
It's
right up there with give.
Yeah,
the two together.
It struck me that being satisfied is a particular weakness here in the West. We struggle with not having enough or perceivably not having enough. We do hoard things sometimes. We do have excess. And yet I know that many of us, including you and I, wrestle with how to be satisfied with what we have, both now and for the future.
Yep.
How do we embody this idea of everyone having their needs met, everyone being generous, everyone being satisfied, while also, say, looking out for ourselves for the long haul? I'm thinking particularly of something like retirement. That many of us have a lot of existential dread about when we think about not having enough.
Yeah.
When we get to that point where we want to stop working or we can no longer work full time. So, is it wrong to save for retirement when there are so many who don't have enough today? Is that not similar to our, when Jesus prays, as you alluded to, give us our daily bread, or like the manna and the quail in the deserts?
Can I leave now? Joking. No, it's one of the, gosh, those are big questions. And I think we have to wrestle with, I mean, part of me is hesitant to give an answer only because I don't know if I have an answer formulated in my head that I am 100% happy with. I mean, I think we can talk about it. I mean, do I think it is wrong to save for the future? No.
Some people do.
Some people do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wrong to save for the future. Do I think saving means that you have to have lifestyle X when you could accept lifestyle Y, or when lifestyle Y is more than enough, but you... I think that we have to ask bigger questions about needs and what is a need. And again, it comes back to the question of satisfaction. There is a wisdom in knowing when to say enough. I think you see it at creation. He knew after 6 days, of course he could have kept adding. He could have done a continuous output or whatever, but he says, no, I'm going to stop, that I have done enough. There is enough here that is complete. And I think there is a rhythm that we need to know to learn when to say is enough. I don't know that enough is the same for every person. It could be. These are very, how about I just turn the question back on you? What do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah. This is why I think this is a genuine wrestling with our, within our Western culture.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are hard and fast answers. I think that the Bible offers lots of kind of wisdom for how we approach our possessions and resources and even money, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that the Bible is shy to talk about. The Bible talks about money a lot more than many other subjects, right?
Yeah.
And so like, it's clearly something that matters a lot. It's clearly something that we need to be in prayer over. We need to like deeply consider the implications of what we are doing, how we're doing it. Like, and I think that maybe what I could say is that for some people, the natural bent is I'm just going to do everything that culture says that I'm supposed to do. That I'm supposed to work and climb the ladder, make as much money as humanly possible, and maybe I'll
retire as soon as I possibly can so I can travel the world.
When like retirement is not in the Bible. Like Moses didn't retire. Yeah.
Well, again, then you start, I mean, I agree. And then you start getting to the conversations about like, well, they didn't live as long as we did. We have to live longer. And there's all of these questions about that. I mean, I'm going to actually retract something that I said or add to something that I said earlier without losing where you're going about retirement. I think that if you are either spending or saving and you have no margin for generosity, you are never satisfied with what you're getting. You always need to have more or new or better. That you stay up at night or often throughout your day, think about the scarcity you have, not having enough, worrying about it constantly. It keeps you up at night. When you are living a very comfortable life, I would say those are kind of internal checkpoints we have to look at. Like if we, and I mean, I'll use we, but if we were ever saving to the point where we could no longer be generous because we were so concerned with our own security, we have lost the plot. We have lost the plot of what it's supposed to be about. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't have a problem with people saving, but when it comes at the cost of all the other words, when you're doing it because you can't be satisfied, if you're doing it because giving and sharing is just so hard for you, if you're doing it because you're trusting in your security in that rather than trusting your security in God, then there are questions that you need to ask yourself about your posture towards those things.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like that when there is no margin for that generosity, that should be a big flashing warning sign that something is not right.
Absolutely. I think that like if you have your daily needs met and you have some left over at the end of the day, can you save some? Yeah, I think you can. If you're saving so much that you're never going to need all that, and you're ignoring the fact that someone else doesn't have their daily needs met. Like if you can do that in good conscience, ignore a need that you see that you know you could meet by having just that little less savings, or so you have little less excess later on. I mean, I think you would have to check your heart posture. And I say that with no judgment because I am a person who, I mean, I think I said this on Sunday, I love a good plan. Like I love a good plan. And there's a natural wiring in me towards that, but it can also become a distraction of if I don't follow this plan exactly, there's going to be failure when I don't think that's how we're called to live. I think we need to, I mean, I don't want to get this into a conversation about tithing or whatever it has to be, and we can cut this out if it needs to go. But I think some people often stick I'm hitting the microphone. I think people stick way too closely to like the idea of 10%. I think some people could be called to give 5%. I think some people could be called to give 25%. I think that your tithing needs to be a very a reflective, spirit-filled conversation about what you have the capacity to meet in terms of other people's needs. I think the idea that it's 10% and beyond 10% I can do whatever the heck I want in this world, I think there is I would question that attitude, I would say.
I love that. I'll let you say that rather than, because it's like it's hard for
a pastor when you're no, but
yeah,
I think tithing. I mean, I would also say tithing. I think is in generosity. Do I think you have to give all 10% to the church? This might be an unpopular opinion for a pastor's wife. We might have to cut this part out.
No, it's fine.
I don't think that tithing has to only be to a church. I think you should be giving to your church. Mm-hmm. I think you should be giving if you are worshiping in a community and you agree with the mission and the vision of that church, you should be tithing to it. Again, I don't think it has to be a static 10%. I think some people give more. There are people who live in more scarcity, and giving is really hard for them. And I think we need to honor that. I think telling them if you're not giving 10%, you're not a good Christian. Like I have an issue with that mentality across the board.
And it also, and again, as a pastor, it's very fraught with like, because it feels very like self-serving and even self-preserving in some ways, right? Like, and so I feel often very uncomfortable with those sorts of conversations, but I like the way that you approach that. And
I think generosity needs to, I think that I love the idea of generosity. I think of generosity for a tax receipt, which I utilize tax receipts. Again, we don't have to talk about this, but like I give to charities and you get tax receipts for it. I also think informal generosity is important. Yeah. Of seeing a need, meeting it, and getting nothing in return. I think
slipping someone some cash.
I mean, making food, having people over, having a big group of people over to your house, that costs money. Like I think that having, making sure that you are being generous with your resources goes. Mm-hmm. It's a bigger mindset than sometimes what we reduce it to, is what I will say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if we ever talked on being satisfied. Knowing when to say enough.
Yeah,
that's being satisfied.
We got there. We're good.
Knowing when to say enough.
And we've said enough for now.
We've said enough.
Let's touch, before we wrap up, let's talk about that final word, broken. And you talked about the foreshadowing of this being an image of the Last Supper, and then ultimately Jesus's body being broken for our sin. I just so rich. But practically speaking, how do we think about brokenness? How do we think about the act of the bread being broken? Is there something for us to consider when we look at our lives as a church?
Yeah. There's a lot of layers there to broken, because brokenness in this passage, I think, is the mechanism to abundance. Jesus breaks the bread, and then we see the miracle of multiplication.
There's something there.
I know, and I actually struggled to articulate it when I was writing. I'm like, I know there's something there, but I can't quite.
Well, okay, so brokenness, and if we use that in kind of like our more modern vernacular, which I think works, like when we think about like I am a broken individual.
Yeah.
I am, there are parts of my life that are fractured and out of order from the way that it ought to be.
Yeah.
And there is something that happens when we share that brokenness,
right? Like, and I think that's what I was trying to get. I'm gonna take it away from you.
Great.
But like when there is an acknowledgement of that brokenness, when it is seen, when it is understood, I feel like that's when we talked about, the abundant grace, the abundant mercy, the abundant love of God. Mm-hmm. In this miracle of abundance, our brokenness is the places where the abundance comes in and flows through, and where it does a work in us. There is something there about that.
And then there's also something about just, and I'll use the word vulnerability, because I think there's a connection there, that when we are vulnerable in our brokenness, when we share our brokenness with one another, like, God does some amazing things.
Yeah, and there's a multiplication factor there to it, right? Like if us sharing our vulnerability, what it could mean to another person, the work of the Spirit that can be done in us and can be done in others by sharing that. Again, you see, I think, that kind of miraculous abundance and multiplication.
I'm a bit of an oversharer at times, and so sometimes after like a sermon, so like after a sermon, someone will come up to me and they'll be like, "Oh, Justin, like, thank you so much for just for your like just openness and transparency to share about like your vulnerability." And I'd be like, "Was I? What? Like what?" Because I'll be like,
there's also something really beautiful in that, because I mean, I think, and you do this really well. I can say this as your wife, is that you don't lean away from the vulnerability of that to the point where sometimes it doesn't even feel like you're being vulnerable. I can be the opposite of that, where, and it's not because I don't want to see that multiplication, and it's not because I don't believe that the Spirit is working in my life. I've always been a more private person. Yeah. For lots of reasons, and yet it's a challenge to me to remember that there is still a piece of my brokenness that it doesn't have to be shame-filled. It can be shared with others, and the Spirit can do an amazing work through that. So
well, I mean, you've had the challenge of growing up pastor's kid.
I mean, that does do it sometimes, is that you just need a little more privacy.
Yeah, and so sometimes it's helpful.
Yeah, my dad was pastor of a large church, so that brings with it its own layers of being in ministry.
For sure. So. Like, and so like, I don't think that you are like wrong for your approach, because I know you have a sphere of friends and people that you can be transparent and vulnerable with, and talk through your life's challenges and do it in that way.
I would agree. I mean, I think the same thing of trying to lean into the trust of God is sometimes you do have to just take those leaps and trust that God will do something with it. We talked about that with giving. We talked about that with other things. I think in all of these you have to do that.
Yeah, there is something pretty profound about when we take that leap of faith and share our story, share our life, share the dark spaces of our life, and the broken places in our life, the ways in which God meets us in that place, the ways that other people are encouraged, because they're like, I'm not alone.
I know.
And then it can extend to actually encouraging one another in growth in those areas, right?
For sure.
For someone who is, honest and vulnerable about a particular sin that they're struggling with, or a particular, if they're struggling through just issues in their relationship, in their parenting journey, in their marriage, whatever, right? That it's like, hey, we're not alone. We're in this together, and it multiplies the care and concern and the love for one another, and then there can actually be like change. Yeah, sure. We can't change if we're not willing to like face and share with God and with one another.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so one final thought. We touch on this you touched on this a little bit. This idea of Jesus getting them to gather in groups of about 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We talk about like the biblical component to that. There's
a numbers component
50,
to it.
50 is an important number.
Yeah.
And that's what you see. You mentioned Jubilee. And were there some other things you didn't get into that you?
Well, I don't know if people are interested in this, but like, so 10 is 7 and 3, the two numbers of complete. 3 is complete community. 7 is the number of completion. That's number 10 together. And 5 are the 5 books of Moses. Then you have 5 and the 10 together, which equals 50. Ooh. There is a whole like numerological component to this passage, which we did not touch on, which I recommend people researching on their own time.
But I love the way you just rhyme that off. That's great.
Oh yeah, it's all there, and then like you add another 10, which is like the 10 and the 3 together gives you the 1,000. It's great. Yeah.
So but I'm thinking like just very practically about the number of kind of in and around 50.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think about the way in which, you mentioned that, we mentioned that Jesus has them gather in that roughly that number of people. And then also that Moses did that as well. Yeah. And I wonder if there's something to that when we think about our ability, our capacity as a people, just as people to like have people in our world that we can care for one another. If you're in a church of 20,000 people, that's hard. It's hard to care for 20,000 people.
You need small groups.
You need smaller
groups.
You need smaller groups, right? And so that's where, I'm just kind of riffing off this idea of like, okay, there are small churches out there that are, of around 50 that would probably do a really, really good job of caring for one another in the way that is described in this passage. You also have groups within churches, like within Courtright, if we have, say like our seniors group, which could be around 50 or maybe a bit more, right? You have our kids, kids ministry with kids and parents of probably more than 50, but it's like, it's a reasonable amount that we can be in community with one another, that we can love each other, welcome each other, that we can share our lives and our brokenness and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking about that number 50 and just like, I just want to riff off that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I agree the number 50 is significant. We've already talked about that in the passage. Why that was the command for Moses to do that in the wilderness, being the number 50. Was it symbolic at that point? Maybe it was symbolic at that point. I think there is something there about that being, this sounds weird, being a manageable size of needs that you can kind of keep a pulse on, or that you can realistically meet. I think that, I mean, Jesus modeled, there are smaller groups. He had his most intimate friends, then he had the disciples, then he had larger groups. So we've see, multi-tiered size of groups throughout the scriptures, and they all serve their various purposes. But I think about this group of 50 seems to be the one that you can reasonably care for. You can gather in community. You can make sure. I mean, in Moses in the wilderness, there was a leader appointed over these smaller groups. And I mean, I don't know what happened with the feeding of the multitude, but there was kind of like a point person who was getting the food, who was making sure it was distributed amongst the 50. We don't know, but I think that would be a reasonable amount of people to make sure, did everyone get enough to eat? Was there enough for this group? Are we meeting the needs of people, kind of where they're at or what they need? And I think it is more manageable in a smaller group. I don't think you could have one person. I mean, you even think about it in a pastoral structure, like one pastor of a church, depending on its size, cannot meet the needs of everyone. They need starting having more staff, having volunteers to come alongside and help do that. There is only so much we can do as people. And I think that, when you're talking about a group or a gathering or a community, 50 for whatever reason seems to be that which was manageable to put a leader over. So.
Yeah, no, it just strikes me as something that I'm always cautious to say, like, this is the model, this is an exact model that we have to follow. But I think that there is some principles there of like, hey, this is just practically speaking, this is a manageable size for people to be able to know one another and to be known, to share one another's lives, to have each other's needs met. Where you're in probably enough, there's going to be enough differences within the people that it's not totally homogenous. I just think that there's something kind of beautiful about that I walked away thinking about a little bit. So.
I don't think 50 was prescriptive.
No, well, it even says roughly 50.
Yeah, it says
right?
roughly 50. Yeah. I do think that, again, from the numerology, I think there is significance. I think Luke is trying to play on numbers to draw images, but I don't think the 50 is meant to be prescriptive. The 50 is, I think, meant to be descriptive of an idea that it is easier to meet the needs of a community when the community is a manageable size. 5,000 men plus however many women and children is not a manageable size to kind of figure out how everything is going on. But, smaller groups of 50, they become something where we can be truly welcoming, where we can be truly intentional, where we can ensure, like you said, making sure we're knowing people and maybe, you can be vulnerable with people and that kind of size. I think it's the manageable. Manageable sounds so...
Well, it's
annoying,
it's
like that.
Very practical.
It's practical. It sounds very practical, but
that's okay. That's what we want. We want to be thinking through those things. So, again, we'll leave it there for now. But I hope that you'll take some time to think and reflect on these 5 words: welcome, give, everyone, satisfied, and broken. And think about the way that looks like in your life, in the life of our church, in the life of our world, ultimately, because as we want to see Jesus's kingdom break into our world, this is the image that Jesus gives us. And so we hope that you'll think about the ways in which that looks like for all of us. So have a great week, and we will see you next time.